Welcome to Therapist Take. We are going to talk about this idea of marrying our unfinished business, so don't go anywhere. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Therapist Take, which is now a podcast in addition to our live broadcast. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, we would encourage you to go check out the show notes. There's going to be lots of great resources there, but also links to our YouTube channel and Facebook page. And you can pick which one to watch us on if you want to watch us live or go watch the rebroadcast of this episode. I'm a YouTube kind of guy. What about you?
Podcast.
You would just
you
don't want to watch it.
I'm not going to watch. No.
Right.
Just listen.
Right. But yeah, head on over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Following us on all our social media accounts is just another way to help us get word out to everybody. From my understanding, the algorithm gods really like that. And so, but whether you're on watching this on YouTube or the rebroadcast or listening to it on the podcast, just make sure you check out the show notes or the description, because we try to put a lot of resources, the things that we talk about. Sometimes as we're talking, we start mentioning certain resources, right, and I'll go back in and add those in there. But also, one thing that's kind of cool about YouTube is that if you haven't noticed, you can chapter out segments now. So I usually try to go back in, especially on these longer videos that are like 30 minutes or longer, go in and put chapters in there so that you can, if there's a part you want to skip or something you want to go back to and re-listen to it or something, it can kind of bookmark it for you in that way. And so do that. And also, you're welcome to ask questions during the live broadcast. But just remember, this is a public forum, and so we can't protect confidentiality in that. But you are welcome to put your question out there. So we are going to talk about this idea that comes from a book by Gottlieb, where she says we marry our unfinished business. And so we're going to talk about a few different things. Usually, like when we put the topic screen up, for those of you watching this, you can see the usually different points we're going to cover. And really, this one is just more just like certain questions that we're going to kind of talk about. First of all, is like, what does that even mean? Marrying our unfinished business. And then if it happens, what is our unfinished business? What happens when you finish your business? And then, where do you go from there? Type thing. And so that's kind of what we're going to spend the next 25 minutes probably talking about.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
But first of all, a word from our sponsor. We don't have any.
We don't have any. Yeah.
So, but
you get to fill that space then,
yeah.
Josh, right?
But it is like, we come to work, Carrie, and then we, as first time I see you walk in and you're like, all right, you ready to do this? Let's get this thing. And then we got to talk about it. And I forgot, how are you doing, Carrie?
Yeah, you didn't even ask me.
I know.
I'm fine. Yeah. How are you doing?
Good.
Okay.
Good.
We just jump right into business.
I feel much more comfortable talking to you when there are these mics right in between our faces.
Yeah. Just sets the stage, right?
Yeah. Like it's getting to the point now where when I'm talking to regular people, I feel very unsafe. They don't have a microphone in front of their face.
Must mean you really need to be heard, Josh.
I don't know, man. If that ever happens, I need somebody to pull me back.
All right, I'll take that on. Take that on.
Yeah, I don't want to get sucked into the media world that much.
No, I don't either.
Right. So, okay. So we were kind of talking about, we're kind of doing this backwards a little bit because usually we'll kind of do the book review at the end. But since this topic is coming directly from that book, I don't know if that is her actual quote or if she's quoting somebody, but it is kind of attributed to Lori Gottlieb, who wrote the book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. Mm-hmm. And in that, she says, we marry our unfinished business. So I think it's a good book.
Yes, you do.
I enjoy it. I thought it was I don't know if it was because it was hitting me because of certain things I was going through in my life or whatever. I don't know. I just thought it was a really good book written by a therapist. It's kind of a memoir.
Yeah. No.
Right?
Yeah. I think that's the best part about it is that it's about her being a therapist, going to her own therapy.
Yeah, and she was kind of cleverly, in my opinion, wrote it, by reflecting on a few different clients, like 4 or 5 different clients she was seeing, and then their story was kind of impacting her story. And maybe that's what I like the most about it, is because that does happen. I mean, how many times when, we set up times for consultation. For example, we are talking about specific cases so that we can figure out how to help. But then sometimes we're making our lunch and sitting down, and then all of a sudden we're consulting again, when this is supposed to be our just kind of wind down time before we go into another session. Because when you do this, for 5, 6, 7 hours a day, every day, it definitely impacts how you see the world, right?
For sure. Yeah. Is that what you appreciated about her book?
I think so. And so it might appeal more to therapists, and I don't know if someone who's not a therapist.
People liked it. I think it.
Well, it's a bestseller.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that's not only being bought by therapists. Then. All 5,000 of us in Oklahoma bought that book.
Purchased it. No, but what is it about this quote, Josh, that stood out to you? Because you wanted to talk about this.
Yeah.
For days.
So to kind of give people context, we were doing a consultation, right? And it was somebody else and it was on a Zoom call that we were doing, and somebody else actually brought that quote up, and I don't know why I missed it the first time around, but as soon as she said it, I was like, whoa, we marry our unfinished business. And I'm like, well, what happens when you finish your business? If that's true, what happens when you finish your business? What happens to the marriage, And it really got me thinking about the work that we do with couples and dealing with a lot of betrayal trauma and rebuilding of the relationship. We often talk about the marriage dying, that like the infidelity is kind of the death blow. Whether they stay together or not, they've got to create something new. Right. And so it just really resonated with me as I like it better than the traditional, we marry our mom, men marry their moms, women marry their dads, type thing,
I think that when you marry your mom or dad, I think that's just so, most people's answer is nuh-uh. And not just in full denial, but like it just doesn't fit. It doesn't hold a lot for people. Sure. So I think it's easy to be like, that doesn't work. But to this broader statement of marrying your unfinished business. Yeah. Well, everybody's got unfinished business.
Yeah. And it can come from multiple sources. Right. Too. Right. So, I mean, I never really have liked the men married. First of all, it's too gender specific, like and heteronormative. Right. Men marry their moms, women marry their dads. I think that many times in here where I'm like, this guy married his dad more, but then I see like, but there are things where his unfinished business has to do with the trauma or whatever was happened between he and his mom or whatever. So it's and then there's bullying that happens so things happen with peers, and then there are grandparents raising grandkids, and there's so many different things, and so I think I like that framework better. But it still poses the question, I think your first question, so mine was like, oh, what happens when you finish your business? But your first question was, do we do it? Do we marry our unfinished business? So what are your thoughts?
I guess that first do we do it comes from more of that psychodynamic, Freudian, you want to marry your mother and kill your father stuff. That's where it came from a little bit. Yeah. With my initial question, do we? Or is that just more of that psychodynamic marrying your moms and dads stuff coming in? And you and I are not psychodynamically trained. We were introduced, but that's not our bread and butter. And so that that model just in general is something that's interesting, and I like using it to create more contemplation. But I don't find it as fitting. And so I think that's where my question is, but do we? comes from.
So your question is kind of a balk, right? Like, But I think that's good because mine was like, "Ooh, I'm jumping right in this thing."
Right.
That sounded good. Okay, I think but I think it's good to have. I think it's good to balk at those things so that the appropriate questions can be asked. But I think just from knowing you for so long and all the conversations that we had, that I'm fairly confident that you're going to agree that that the life experiences that we have from birth to whenever we do find a partner in a committed relationship, those life experiences are going to impact your choice of partner. Mm-hmm. Agreed?
Agreed.
All right.
Yes.
Whew, thank goodness.
These things will really go off the rails.
Yeah. And so, and one thing that I tell clients a lot is that, just to put it in perspective, that because I think a lot of people do kind of get a little still kind of like, oh, don't tell me that my mama didn't hold me enough when I was a baby,
right.
type thing.
Sure.
Oh, you want to go back and talk about my childhood, And one thing I say is that, look, I was like, especially people who are like in their mid 30s or early 40s, I'm like, when you turn 36 years old, for most people, I would say, at 36 years old, at that point in time, you just spent the equal amount of time in your childhood, in your adult life that you'd have in your childhood.
Yeah.
And, I'm 43, so I'm a few years removed from 36, but I can remember going, man, 30, I was kind of feeling old at 36. Mm-hmm. I kind of felt like I'd been around a little bit.
Right.
I'm not the world's gift to wisdom, but I felt like, I'm in that point where I can be like, I'm grown.
I know some things. Yeah.
But it's like, wow, that we spend a long time, in other words, in those childhood homes.
Right.
So of course we're going to be impacted by what we experience in them.
Yeah.
And we're not in charge either.
And we're not in charge. And it's the first time. And just think about everything that's your, the first experience of thing, how powerful that is. Yeah. Have you ever revisited like a restaurant or something that you loved to eat as a kid and you're like, oh, it doesn't taste the way I remember? Right.
Oh yeah.
And
it's so disappointing.
It's so disappointing. And it's not the idea that your taste buds have changed and become more sophisticated.
Yeah.
It's also the idea that the first is your brain doesn't know what to do with those first experiences, right? It has it's very, very powerful. It takes up a lot of space and power. And so I think kind of the same thing that you're saying, those first 18 years are our first exposure to things, and we're not in charge of them. And so that's going to shape you. And so it's not that we are being too, psychoanalytic when we ask you, tell me about your childhood.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that too, a funny story is that I won't eat nacho cheese with, chips. So like your ballpark nachos, basically. I will not eat them. If you had those at your house, I wouldn't touch them. I would say that's gross. Or sometimes I'm going to admit to something here. Sometimes when I go to Taco Bell and they're like, I have to ask them, is it nacho cheese or shredded cheese? Because don't put nacho cheese on my taco, And I'm like, because it's gross. But when I go to a ball field, I will devour ballpark nachos. But only at Little League games. I go to like a major league game or something. No, won't touch them.
Josh.
But it's like I'm eating my childhood.
Yeah.
Right.
The power of context.
Sure. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. So all of a sudden they taste good
when
they come out of a place that probably they have all kinds of germs and other things we don't want to know about.
It's just powdered orange stuff anyway. So you're all right.
What is it?
I don't know. Don't look.
Don't
look.
Right.
Don't.
Yeah.
No.
But to that point, we so when we talk about marrying our unfinished business, is that I think a way to kind of think about it is like, when my wife and I got married, she had this checklist of all the things that she wanted in a guy, and someone had told her once, like, if he doesn't meet all these things, then don't do it, And so I'm, to my credit, check the box.
Check.
That I met all the things on her list, right? And apparently, after visiting with different people, that a lot of people do that. But one thing I talk about is that there is, you got, for every 10 things you have on your checklist that you're conscious of, you've got 100 things that your brain's checking off that's meeting a standard that you're not even aware of.
Sure.
That's happening, right?
Sure.
And so, sometimes they don't need to be checked off. I mean, because we do tend to gravitate toward what's familiar. So,
Absolutely.
So sometimes people who've had more trauma, who've experienced more of the darker side of life than they ever should by the time they enter into those relationships, they might gravitate toward a relationship that isn't good for them, and they might do that a few times before they start to realize something's going on here. And just a disclaimer here, I don't want anybody to ever think, like, if you're in a domestic violence situation or you've been cheated on, that it's your fault because you chose wrong.
Right.
Like anybody that tells you that, you need to turn and run because they do not have your best interest at heart. I do think that when you find yourself in these situations over and over again, you got to look at a deeper thing that might be going on.
Right.
Also not your fault.
Right. Familiar is very powerful.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. And that's another way of saying the brain is very powerful.
The brain is very powerful. The brain likes familiar.
Yeah. And this is a part of our brain that operates without our permission.
Absolutely. The unconscious.
Right. And that's one of the books, I like really well is The Untethered Soul, where he says, I think he's quoted as saying something to the effect of, it's Michael Singer who wrote that book, that said, we are not the voice of our mind. We are the ones that hear it. And I really like that because it does reflect on that idea that there of a part of us that's operating without our permission.
Yeah. It's very parts language. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Parts language. Okay, so if we're in agreement that sometimes our partners reflect our unfinished business, another way that I've said that to clients over the years is in committed relationships, we tend to expect our partners to make up for where other important people fell short in our lives. It's another way that I've said that.
Sure.
And I think we all do that to some degree, especially when we're new, kind of babes in our adult life, right? And so if you're having this revelation that my partner is some version of my unfinished business, I think one of the things that happens sometimes to people is like, another person can't be my unfinished business. I can't. It's not going to work. I mean, you've seen that.
Yes.
We've seen that in session before, where it worked for a while, and then it didn't anymore. Right, and now they're left to finish their business.
Yeah. And I think it works for a little while because of the thing you always like to talk about. How the beginning of relationships, that falling in love, right, is very codependent, is very all-consuming, feels really good, right? And it has, it has a shelf life because being that connected and slightly obsessive about somebody else is not a sustainable position, right? You just can't do that. And so I think that's why a lot of the business that's unfinished is hard to see until the relationship has been established for a little while. And some of that normal developmental process of a relationship have settled from that infatuation beginning stage to, kind of like more everyday life, more reality. Yeah. And that's often when people start saying, oh gosh, right? Things aren't the way they were before. And depending on where they are in their life, is this a pattern?
Right.
Right. Which reflects perhaps the unfinished business.
Yeah. And I think, to the question of what is the unfinished business, I think that it's some version of self-discovery is really what I think it is. Because I do think that, I don't know how we can do it any differently in what I'm about to say, because I think that we get launched into our adult life playing kind of Mad Libs with our life. And so it's like the rules have been written for us based upon the rules we whatever kingdom we lived in and
born into.
your home, your parents, your grandparents, whoever was writing the rules, shaped and molded your how you're going to do life moving forward. And it's like I'm going to go into life with a set of rules, but there are a bunch of blanks, and I want to fill in the blanks because it's I got to be different
because it's my life,
right? So I'm going to fill in the blanks, and then over the course of time, you realize like it's not enough. Like it's I've got to actually kind of scrap the whole thing and just start rewriting. And and I think that's why it takes so long, or when I say so long, it feels really long to people going through it, but in the grand scheme of life, it's not that long, but it feels that way. But that, I think the brain is really having to examine like every rule, every principle, every value, put it under the microscope, and then decide, is it going to be part of the new way or not? Right. Is it going to get scrapped? Is it going to move forward, or does it just need to be altered some? And that just takes time. And whereas before you have a page full of paragraphs and sentences with just blanks that you have to fill in this way you don't even have a table of contents. Like it's just blank pages, right? And so it can be a little overwhelming for people.
Sure. I think even saying it like that, like you're saying, means it's not going to start happening at 18.
Right. Yeah.
Because you're still working from perhaps that, the world's established playbook for you.
Yeah. Well, when you think about the work that we do, we are quite literally helping people rewrite their rules to their life. I mean, how many 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds have we worked with that's what we're doing? We have, but it's not very many.
Right.
It usually takes, I would say, at least a decade or two, or sometimes two, sometimes more.
Yeah,
before this thing happens to people where they're like, okay, I've got to take this journey.
Right. So when you're even thinking about in the therapy room, Josh, when you're talking about unfinished business, would you also be using it as a description of the patterns in your life? Would that also be a way that you would help people become more aware?
For example?
I think that, like you're talking about age, I think there are a lot of 25-year-olds aren't aware of their patterns because they don't know if everything is a pattern yet. They're at the beginning, right? So is this unfinished business or is this something else, right?
So you're talking about like patterns related to like habits or like perhaps communication patterns?
Yeah, communication patterns, conflict patterns,
right?
Even who you find yourself attracted to. Is that a pattern? And if you're at the beginning, it can't be a pattern because there hasn't been enough opportunity for repetition.
Yeah.
But, is there a pattern in those things? And does that reflect unfinished business?
I think so. But I don't necessarily think, I don't necessarily think changing the pattern is the unfinished business. I think it's becoming aware of it.
Yes, I agree.
And examining it. So it's like, getting off autopilot, and that's miserable, by the way. Like if you can't get back on ever, it's like you're like constantly overcorrecting, trying to get back on autopilot. I think that's what a lot of people are going through when they get knocked off of it. Yeah. But like, for example, if typically what you would do is I'm a guy, it's like, and so, a girl comes walking. I'm entering into a building, and a girl's walking behind me, and I'm gonna, by just autopilot, my pattern is to just open the door for her because that's what a gentleman is supposed to do.
Sure.
Right. And so I think when you're going through this thing, this rewriting thing, and like a self-discovery, what I tell people is like, why? Why are you supposed to open the door?
Sure.
And they kind of look at me sometimes like, man, you're a jerk. And I'm like, no, it's like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't open the door. Sure. That might be something that you want to be part of your value system as you move forward in life. But I think, can't we at least just ask the question, like, why do we have to? Like, who said? Why do you have to take your hat off when you enter a building? Why do you have to put your hand over your chest when you say the national anthem, or sing the national anthem? So it's not saying you can't do that or you shouldn't do it.
Right.
But one thing that I found myself doing when I was going through my journey is like, I got real defiant with wearing my seatbelt. And like, I was just like, this is my big rebellious thing in life. Like, I'm going to show you, I'm not going to wear a seatbelt, and my thoughts like, I did, by the way, if I get pulled over and I get a ticket, I'm just going to pay the ticket. Yeah, I'm wearing my seat, and that actually happened. I got pulled over, got a ticket.
You got a ticket.
Yeah.
You had to pay it.
But it was just kind of like, I think I was also going through like that, well, why do I have to, type thing. Yeah. And I was a little angry.
Yeah. But those journeys, I mean, unless you have maybe a personality that's always questioning authority and, that more rebellious type that rebels just to rebel, I think most people are compliant. And so the idea of I'm going to have a protest behavior, like not wearing my seatbelt, right?
Right.
It is about that. It's an extension of starting to ask those hard questions. Right.
No, absolutely.
And it reflects your business then, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, who are you beating when you don't wear a seatbelt?
Right. The man.
Right. I know.
Whoever that is.
I know.
And why does it have to be the man? But no, yeah, it's all those questions. And then, that's, I think what we do, like going back to what I was saying earlier, is we tend to expect our partners to make up for where other important people fell short. Mm-hmm. And that's very similar to what I think Lori Gottlieb is saying about marrying your unfinished business, is that, it might seem like that works in the beginning because this person, like, say that I grew up with some kind of love deficit, and then my partner just really filled that void, and it felt so good in the beginning. And then, I remember an old professor of mine that said, what's sand in the shoes before you're married becomes rocks after you're married, So all of a sudden now this thing that was like, oh, I loved how she squeaks when she laughs. And it's like, I can't stand how she squeaks when she laughs, type thing, but it's beyond that too. It's like this, I think it exhausts the relationship, like where, it's fun and feels good in the beginning, and probably for the other person too, because I also don't think, we're kind of talking about codependent relationships here. Right. And I don't think that it just means one person's codependent. Right. I think codependency can look different for both people, but it's a codependent relationship. It kind of requires two people to be involved.
Two people on the other side of the teeter-totter.
And so it's, it feels really good in the beginning, and we're both drawing off of that. But then it's like, it starts becoming exhausting because if I have some love deficit, and then my wife can't, if she needs to love something else at some point in time, which is going to happen, then I start freaking out or whatever. Right. Like, no, you're pulling away from me, and then now we got a problem, right? And so that, I think, whatever it takes, and I hope that, I don't think it means people have to be cheated on or anything like that for people to go through this. And I hope that doesn't happen to people. But I do think that most people will go through this re-examination of, oh, wait a second, this person, I've been utilizing this person to kind of mask this unfinished business. I need to finish the business. Right. But here's the dilemma. And this is what hit me the hardest when we were talking about this the other day. That what happens to the relationship when you finish your business? Yeah. Because if that's true, I'm about to cough, sorry. If that is true, that we tend to marry our unfinished business, and we realize that, then that means that marriage or that committed relationship is kind of born out of the unfinished business, out of that premise. Loss, deficit, something, yeah. So I kind of think this is why people are so resistant to doing the work, is because I think intuitively they know, if I do this, what is this going to mean for us? And I think
the rules change, like we talked about a couple.
I mean, how many times have you seen this?
A lot.
With couples, right?
And there's kind of almost a time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and we have to help them pace themselves.
Yes.
And it's not a race to the finish line, right? Because we are talking about a very big deal. And so it's kind of, slightly nudging people in that direction, but it's helping people get to the point where they realize that, you can keep doing what you're doing forever if you want.
Right.
And this is what it'll be.
Right.
And it's not a very, pleasant future.
Right.
So it seems. Or you can take this journey and hope that the other person in their journey through this, that you'll be able to figure out how to dance again,
to be together
and create a new dance together.
Yeah. But that's really scary.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Letting go and jumping into the unknown. It's very scary.
Yeah.
But it makes me keep thinking of that quote. I always tell my clients, it's my favorite quote as a therapist, right? The M. Scott Peck quote, right? Mental health is a commitment to reality at all costs.
Right.
And so you can stay in the space where we pretend it's the same and we know it's not the same. But that's not reality. The reality is it's different. And is that the healthier route? More painful, perhaps, but also more accessible for joy and satisfaction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of how many times in using that quote that I've actually asked a couple sitting across from me, or one part of the couple, and said, like, would you be willing to lose the other person for the sake of reality, for the sake of truth, or whatever your truth is, and what, and almost always it's never a no and it's never a yes. It's like always this pause, because it's like, whoa, because it does kind of, and I'm glad for that too, because I would want them to pause. Like, it's, the idea of losing your partner should never be
shrugged off.
Yeah, shrugged off. Should never be like, it should be troubling. And but I do think that is what is on the line. But I will say too, for people listening too, is that I also tend to believe that love is the foundation. So I actually tend to believe, like, when it comes to our true selves, that we probably are showing more of our true self during our dating relationship, because if you think of your true self as you without your stuff, right? And what do we say when we're dating someone? We're going to put our best foot forward. Right. So it's me without all my garbage, and then it's like, but I got all this garbage, right? And I do think that it's a mistake to hide that garbage, but at some point in that relationship said, hey, so this is me, this is my truly who I am, right? But I do come with baggage, and I want to introduce you to that, because it is part of what makes me now, right? And so I tend to lean toward the idea that we tend to fall in love with the true versions of each other, and that is, I think, is foundational. But despite what the Beatles said, and I know we all like the Beatles, love is not all you need. No, it's not. Right? If I'm building a house, I think I want more than a foundation. You do. Right? I want walls and a roof and a couch and maybe some amenities. Maybe electricity. Some indoor plumbing, maybe. But love is foundational, and you got to have a solid foundation. So that, I think, as a therapist, that's where my hope comes in, because I want to see them together too. But I think everybody kind of has to entertain the idea of being okay not being together in order to be together. Right. It's that paradox. The paradox. I was going to say your favorite thing to talk about, paradox. Yeah. Mental health and relational health are found in paradoxes. Right? Yes, yes. So I know. So I think we gave everybody perfect answers. Yeah, that wasn't complicated. Not at all. And it's clear. Yeah. Right? See, this is where people that are watching this, we're trying to get our producer over here, our Hanah, to join in on our podcast. So she's sitting over here. You can't see her. She's sitting over here with headphones on, and she's working all the things on the screen. But this would be a good time to say, Hanah, Was that confusing to people, you think? Are we talking over people's heads, or are we on point? Thumbs up, Hannah, if you think
thumbs up,
it was.
thumbs down.
And then in the middle,
Okay.
she's giving us thumbs up.
Thumbs up or middle finger, who knows? Right,
Yeah, what was that?
I think it
Carrie,
was.
you need to put your glasses on.
I can't see anything. Sorry, honey.
It was thumbs up.
It's
Carrie.
useless. I can't see it.
But yeah, we welcome your thoughts or comments on that. I know, like in these short, even to us, a 30-minute video is like we gotta get off here, and but it's still not near enough time to really go into the depths and complexities of these types of issues. So feel free to ask questions of clarity, or even suggest like what would you like Carrie and I to give our take on, and if it's something we think we know a little bit about, or just have thoughts that we think people might be interested in, we'll share them. Right.
That's also okay for us to be therapists, which means that we drop an idea and we leave you a little uncomfortable. Right?
Yeah.
So just know that there's meta levels, perhaps, right?
I think you're managing your own feelings right now.
Because I didn't answer it clearly, and I say, well, you're not supposed to have clarity. Yeah, perhaps. And I also am very comfortable with leaving people uncomfortable.
That's right.
Yeah.
We need to be comfortable with leaving people uncomfortable.
I think we've learned that.
But don't you think that's hard? Like when people are leaving your session and they're like,
you feel this pull to give them something. Yeah.
Especially when the hard thing comes at the very end.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man, like
I don't have enough time to scoop them back up. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're people. Yeah. We care about it. We want to give them at least, whatever kind of statement that wraps it up and is nicer. But that's also we're not there for our comfort.
Right.
I know.
Yeah, I just wanted to fix everybody.
I know.
Oh, I said, but any of my people listening to this are going to be calling me out on it because I don't like using the word fix.
I know. I was
and
talking
to people.
They know you, Josh. You can't do that.
I don't like using the word fix because we're not fixing people.
Nope, we're not.
We're just helping with healing.
We're just supporting. Right.
Well, we appreciate anybody who is watching this, listening to this, and find it valuable. Again, please make sure you subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to this on the podcast, giving us a review would be awfully nice. So again, awfully nice, meaning give us the nice reviews. If you're not gonna give us a nice review, just don't give us one. How about that?
Silence is deafening. Yeah.
So, anyways, but appreciate everybody who support us, and we'll be back here next time.
All right. Thank you.